The passage goes like this. There was a group of people whose relative had died. They brought a piece of fine white fabric, wrapped up the corpse, and deposited it on the cremation ground. At that time, Ananda was wandering there, and as soon as he saw the fabric, he took it. That dead person stirred and said to Ananda, "Do not take my fabric. Do not take my garment." Ananda came back, covered up the dead person with the fabric, and left. Ananda arrived back at the Jetavana monastery and said to the monks, "At such and such a place, a dead person is covered with fine piece of fabric." There was a monk called Black Ananda, who was brutish and powerful, who asked Ananda, "Where is that? Where is the body?" He answered, "It's over there." And Black Ananda immediately went to get it. At that time, the dead person stirred and said to Black Ananda, "Do not take my garment." Black Ananda scolded him. "Petty spirit, filthy spirit, how is it possible the fabric belongs to you? It is because you crave this garment that you have been reborn as a spirit." Black Ananda took the garments and ran ahead as the dead body wailed and chased after him. Black Ananda brought the cloth back to the Jetavana, and the powerful and righteous gods and spirits of the Jetavana did not allow that petty spirit inside the monastery, and the dead body slumped down into a ditch surrounding the Jetavana. At that time, Black Ananda took the cloth, showed it to the monks, and said, "This is the garment of the dead person. I took it." This is the close of the passage I want to present. Please take a moment now to view the Chinese version as well. Now, the behavior of Black Ananda should raise a red flag for the careful reader. Based on this passage, should we view Black Ananda according to the classic voluntarist model? Or is it more likely Black Ananda should be viewed through the culturalist lens, and that he was a member of a broader caste-specific Chandala community, one tied, like Kali, to the socioeconomics of the cremation ground? Given the terseness, opacity, and dehumanizing language which pervades the cemetery ascetic archive within the highly Brahmanized Vinaya, I suggest we turn briefly to two contemporary anthropologies on violence and spirit mediumship to aid in our interpretation of the culture of Black Ananda and his Pamshakulika community. Part 3. The Chandala cultural logic of subaltern mediumship. In Death Power, Eric Davis details how contemporary Cambodian funerals in the Sangha appropriates the Pamshakula of the corpse as part of the culture of shamanic rituals intended to pacify the dangerous spirits of the dead person. While some of Davis's informants read the transfer of Pamshakula cloth to the Sangha only as a metaphor for monastic control over these volatile and threatening spiritual entities, there were other voices who suggested the death shroud was, in fact, the literal vessel of the dead spirit. This meant that the monastic ritual specialist was responsible for the domestication of dangerous ancestral spirits by means of appropriating their death shroud. Should the monastic institution fail to appropriate the Pamshakula cloth, the spirit will continue to wreak havoc upon the world of the living by damaging crops, spreading illness, attacking children, and creating strife within families. In our case about the Pamshakulika, there is no explicit reference to the ensoulment of the death fabric by the spirit associated with the corpse, nor is there any stated concern that these cremation ground ascetics must perform a ritual isomorphic with that of the contemporary Cambodian Sangha. However, the relationship between the bodies of Black Ananda and the corpse's spirit in our story is animated by the currency of the death fabric. Before stripping the corpse of its funerary shroud, Black Ananda scolded it. Petty spirit, filthy spirit, how is it possible it belongs to you? It is because you crave this garment that you are reborn as a spirit. Black Ananda's actions are liable to interpretation as a pathological cruelty. But this discursive formulation is in fact representative of the kind of sermonizing required by the monastic ritual specialist vocation in the contemporary Cambodian context. The spirit identifies with the death shroud to the extent that Black Ananda's response is to state the classic Buddhist truth, that selfhood is constituted by the perverse attachment to the objects with which one most identifies. By stripping the corpse ghost of its funeral shroud, Black Ananda plays the role of ritual specialist, removing the impediment to the spirit's liberation while simultaneously turning a profit. He gets to keep the fabric. This is a cultural logic uninterested, I would argue, in the voluntarist soteriological framework. Lawrence Babb, in his now classic study of outcast priest-exorcists of the Baiga tribe in Chhattisgarh, called the Divine Hierarchy, contextualizes subaltern power in a manner that makes cultural sense of figures such as Black Ananda. Lawrence Babb characterizes the Baiga ritual specialist as one who evinces easy familiarity with the worlds of minor gods and goddesses and the malevolent spirits. These malevolent spirits include witches and ghosts, are associated with burning grounds and with graveyards. People from across the caste spectrum call upon the Baiga to combat witchcraft and possession by ghosts and other malignant beings. Babb's analytical frame for thinking about patronage networks which support the Baiga is relevant to our analysis because it is precisely the outcast status of the Baiga that provides them with the capacity to combat and control the restless dead on the cremation grounds. Surprisingly, Brahmanical power in Chhattisgarh does not diminish the social function of the Baiga. According to Babb, the Brahmin and the Baiga partake in a complementary social dynamic. Each has their own sphere of influence, but critically, both serve, and thus interact with, the full range of caste society. Like the Baiga ritual specialist, Black Ananda seems to be capable of combating and controlling the restless dead, thus serving a vital social function. This paper only very briefly addresses the work I've been doing over the past 8 years on the relationship between caste and Buddhism, but I hope I have made a beginning to communicate why I believe the archive of Buddhist cremation ground asceticism is useful for the documentation of an outcast presence within the Buddhist monastery. I conclude here with 4 summary points. First, Pamshakulika ascetics will encounter spirits in the cremation ground, and these monastics will be familiar with the patterns and ways of the spirits. Second, from Eric Davis, we learn that there is a long tradition of viewing the corpse shroud as the ritual currency of spiritual power, and that this suggests a pastoral role for Black Ananda. Third, Lawrence Babb's anthropology of the Baiga indicates to us the power of outcast figures as subaltern shamans with special knowledge about how to control the dead. Fourth, and finally, I hope I have persuaded the audience that the social meaning of asceticism, at least the Pamshakulika cremation ground asceticism I have discussed today, should be understood not as some perverse brand of the voluntarist soteriological impulse. On the contrary, I hope we can shift our collective interpretive lens to see the Pamshakulikas as a product of a socioeconomic context, initially found outside, very far outside, of the Buddhist monastic institution, one that is intimately connected with outcast shamanic labors in the death economy. Thanks very much for your time, and I look forward to conversations in person in the near future with all of you.